My name is Anna Christina. I'm a Chief Financial Officer and an author. I'm originally born in Alexandria, Egypt, but I now live in the States. I've been living in the States for the last 47 years. I was poisoned. I was actually murdered 5 years ago due to my $1 million life insurance. So I was poisoned by rat poisoning, which was put in my coffee every morning by my ex-husband. And I did not notice that he stopped drinking coffee until I had a vision one day that somebody was dying in my family, and I assumed that it was my younger brother who's mentally handicapped. So I decided to fly out to Egypt the next morning. So because I was gonna fly out, he decided to finish me off that night. And that's when he put a lot of the poison in my dinner, who he cooked for me. And that night, I became paralyzed head to toe. And he tried finishing me off. But I was paralyzed, but not dead. And then at the end, he decided to suffocate me by closing my nose and mouth until I died. But my soul kept on going. That's when I noticed that I had died, when I couldn't breathe anymore, and he wouldn't lift his hands off my mouth nor my nose. And I had a short visit to heaven. In heaven, I saw my mom and my father and my sister, who had committed suicide 20 years earlier, but she was in heaven, which was not what we were told. Growing up, we were told if you commit suicide, you go to hell. And I was delighted to see Nadia in heaven. And before I came back, Jesus revealed his face to me. And I remember when he was revealing it, it was taking a long time for him to reveal his nose. Then I noticed his nose was so long that I told him, I asked him, "You're Jewish, aren't you?" And he smiled as he revealed the rest of his face. And then I came back on earth. I saw my room, and I saw my husband holding me as he was crying over my naked body. But I jumped in my body. I didn't want him touching me, and I jumped out of bed, and I was no longer paralyzed. And I was healed head to toe. The near-death experience changed my life dramatically. Encountering death and the fascination of death and the peace of death, it was so peaceful, regardless of the horrific way I was murdered. The peace that I had as I was dying, the Holy Spirit revealed himself to me. I had never known what the Holy Spirit was before. And he coached me step by step during the torture, during the breaking down of my nervous system. The pain was so high, but because of his coaching, I was able to endure the pain. And it didn't matter what was happening to my body. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is to give comfort to others who lost a loved one to a horrific death, to let them know that most likely they were not alone, because the Lord comes to victims, comforts victims, regardless of religion, regardless of faith. Because I believe God doesn't like us being victimized. And he's such a loving God. Just the love I encountered was amazing. And that's why it didn't matter what was happening to my body. And of course, encountering the Holy Spirit and the peace and love filled my heart with so much compassion to others, compassion to strangers, compassion to animals, compassion to elderly, compassion to young people. It's just, I have so much compassion to people, it's crazy. And it's hard for me to actually conduct my job as a chief financial officer because you're supposed to be strict and hard and, you know, sometimes not have a soul to be, you know, the auditor, the police person. But I'm so emotional and compassionate that I don't want to go back to the work field. Actually, I quit a few months ago. It's hard for me to practice that job now with the compassion that I have. I just want to impact people's life. I want to share my story with everybody. I want to tell people not to fear death. I want people to know about God. I want people to know about the love that we have. One thing the Holy Spirit had revealed to me, that He was in every little detail of my life. And He has become that now. He's become, I acknowledge Him now. Before I missed out on Him. Now I acknowledge Him in every little detail. And I've learned to live life knowing Him and acknowledging Him and making Him my best friend. And it's been a very amazing journey now on earth. I kind of like took a piece of heaven down on earth. And He's been in, what I can say now, before I used to love God, now I'm in love with God. And I can't imagine my life without Him. He's just helped me, even like in the difficulties, having Him in my life has made a big difference. Knowing how He is in my life. I remember everything I encountered, and now I cannot miss out on Him anymore. He's a huge part of my life. He's become my soulmate now. And that changed my life dramatically. When the Holy Spirit revealed Himself, He revealed Himself as a voice. He was talking to me so clearly as I'm talking to you right now. It was a very clear voice in my mind speaking to me, but I was not allowed to talk or share what was happening at that time. He told me I was to shut my mouth. I was not to say anything. It was years later that I was able to reveal and talk. But at the time, and I know He was protecting me because I didn't say anything about my near death, my visit to heaven, the visitation of the Holy Spirit, and yet they put me in a mental hospital. So could you imagine? All I said was my husband tried to murder me and they thought I was having a nervous breakdown. You can imagine if I had said I had a near death, or I visited heaven, or I saw my mom or dad, or the Holy Spirit spoke to me, I would have been locked up until today. So He protected me by telling me not to say anything. But I was able to share that afterwards. One thing I did is I did dedicate my book to all the souls who've been murdered by a loved one and their voices were never heard. Because I do believe many souls have been murdered that way, and their death was made to look like it was overdose or suicide or drowning. But I believe I'm one of a few that have been murdered and come back to share the story of how greed and love of money can blind even a loved one to murder.